as an intro, actually, there's some general comments there, which is I'd request that you bear in mind that the gear inspection, especially for people who are here the first time, is their first point of contact with us, really. So I would request you to be respectful with the competitors and clear, unambiguous, okay? Just that we establish a good relationship there. To me, really, I see this gear inspection as a dialogue between us and the competitors. They're not, we're trying to understand their thought process behind what they're showing us, and they're trying to explain in as concise and clear a fashion as possible what their thought process is, so that at the end of the day we have clarity. This is not a thorough PPE inspection. What we're doing here is we're assessing function. Those are two very different things. So what I am expecting you is, as I say, just professional, respectful behaviour of competitors, bring them in, work through their gear and move them on. What I'm not expecting of you is to have answers to every question. I don't have answers to every question. The process there is that you've got your A and B inspectors. I've got a couple of teams with 3 people on them. Work through the questions as they come up. Try and be thorough and consistent. If there's something that you're not clear about amongst yourselves, please pull in myself or Didge or one of us, one of the committee members, to try and further clarify. What we may do then is, if we don't have an answer, is we'll reference manufacturer information, go online, try and find an answer. Hopefully at the end of that process we'll have clarity. Nobody has all the answers. Over the years, this has become an increasingly difficult terrain to navigate. I'll be completely open with you, but I think as long as we bear in mind, my definition of a competent person is a person who knows his or her area of competence and is also aware of when he or she steps outside that area of competence and then is able to refer or to fall back on technical support. That's my definition of competence. I'm painfully aware of my shortcomings, and where I have shortcomings, I try to improve and get better. Sometimes successfully, sometimes less so. So the process is going to be, going back, we don't really have a covered space outdoors. We've got a couple of those pop-up tents. So we can get a number of tables underneath there for shade. I don't think shade is going to be the issue tomorrow. If we start developing torrential rain, but I think that's for the afternoon, we have a plan B in the glass houses. Hopefully we'll get gear check done in the morning out in the park. And save us shuttling the gear back and forwards. So that's what we're thinking, is doing it in the park. That's our plan A. We'll have Chris, go ahead, Mark.
What's the start time for gear check?
Start time for gear check is 9. I would suggest there's going to be breakfast in the park. Obviously the people working the events will be there beforehand. There's breakfast in the park again for everybody involved is set up.
Time breakfast.
7? I'm going to say 7. And then we'll have Chris Kenny will be moving people into the tables. We'll have people set up on tables. We've got 11 teams. I don't know, let's say we have 15 tables in there. We have people setting up on those tables so that we can rotate people straight through. When somebody's finished, we can move you on to the next table, kind of thing. Okay? And Chris will be directing people to tables. They will have filled inspection sheets, gear inspection forms. If their gear inspection forms are not filled, please ask them to sort it out and come back later. And I mean, if they come with a completely blank sheet, if there's 1 or 2 points to the blank, that doesn't matter, obviously. The inspection sheets, not so new. I've actually managed to get the 2017 sheets in here. We have, again, you know all this, I'm going to say it anyway, we've subdivided equipment into different categories. We have, the first thing is systems, which is a collection of fall protection components that connect off the harness or the anchor assembly. Okay, that'd be something like work positioning system, your climbing system, an ascent system. Those things belong in there. You have, so that's systems. Then you have your continued systems here that you can fill. And finally you have assemblies, which is a collection of 1 or more components. So that would be an anchor assembly. So like a pulley saver, which consists of a piece of rope with a Prusik with a pulley on it, so that's multiple components. It could be a lanyard, that all belongs in there. Or you have finally standalone components, that's a carabiner, a sling, a pulley. But really we're interested in seeing, to be able to assess neighbouring component compatibility, we want to be able to see how these things are actually put together. So that, you know, in terms of assemblies and systems. We don't just want to have a stack of carabiners, a stack of slings, a stack of eye-to-eyes, because that doesn't give us much information of how they're actually being put to work. So that's why we're saying keep your systems together, keep your assemblies together, and if you've got standalone components, try and bring them in, we'll look at those as well. Does this make sense? Yeah. Not rocket science. So this is a worked example of how a gear inspection sheet might look, and let's try and get this one right, okay? So what's happening is we've got the first column, which is pass. Not a problem, that's all good. You just fire them off, and it's fine, forget the thing. You've got a second column, which is quarantine, Q for quarantine, R for resubmit, or M for missing. Okay, so in this case, Dizzy Lyles had a rope adjustment device. There was something missing there, screw missing. So it's a resubmit. He's going to come back afterwards or in the morning to resubmit that. And on his, he had a carabiner there. Mechanism was sticky. The gate was sticky. It's a resubmit. He had a carabiner down here again, sticky gate, and he's going to resubmit that in the morning. Then in the morning he comes back. I had a look at it. That was all passes in the end. Could also be a quarantine if he didn't manage to sort it out, and then it goes in the box of doom. But all of those columns need to be either a pass or a pass in the back or a quarantine in the back. All of those conflicts have to be resolved at the end of the process, okay? I don't want to have boxes that are empty there, or if there's a resubmit, there has to be something in the back. Hopefully there'll be passes in the first column everywhere. That'll be nice. Because at the end of the process, we have anchor assembly checked, yes or no. We have photographs taken, yes or no. And when all that is done, process complete, yes, and we fire it off.
You want initials?
It'd be helpful. We've actually got new forms. There's actually the name up there. We didn't have that on the old forms. But we need to have, when I'm flipping through the gear inspection forms at the end, that top right-hand corner is what I'm checking. I'm checking for a yes. And it's really easy if that's in there, because if it's not, I have to go back to the teams and say, you know, what was the problem here? Why is there not a yes there? And if there's a yes there, why doesn't it say if yes or no the photographs were taken? Because then I have to go and look for Dave, or was there an anchor assembly, yes or no? Inline anchor assembly, yes or no? I'm not quite sure. The ascent systems, that form looks a little bit different, but the principle is the same. Yeah.
So that if it's no and there's stuff to check that's going to resubmit, then we don't put no, we just leave it blank.
You could leave it blank or put in a no. I'm not fussed. If there's nothing in there, I'll assume that nothing was shown in terms of inline anchor points. Mark.
How many photos are we talking?
Excuse me.
How many photos are we talking?
One photograph. So when you're finished, yeah, you call Dave over. And Alex will have bits of paper and Sharpies there. You put the car's number or name by the gear, and Dave just takes a photograph of all of the gear. It just gives us something to document what we were actually shown. Yeah, so inline anchor points and ascent systems go to what you're going to do with when you've done all of this stuff and you come to the ascent system or inline anchor points. You send them to Jason, Taylor, Christian, and Warren. They'll be over in a corner, and they'll be assessing that separately. This is going to be interesting. I'll just speak to that afterwards. I just did. That's what we're just talking about. So, a couple of issues that have cropped up over the last year. Oh no, it's different. So, just to summarise, I keep on forgetting this, so it's useful for me to see this once a year. We have minimum diameter climbing lines 11 mil. Minimum diameter access line, this is something that just cropped up before for the ascent event, is 10 mil. Minimum diameter for lanyards is 10, friction cordage is 8, add-in Prusik for half body weight, I'll just talk about that, is 6 millimeter, and for full body weight is 8 millimeters. Okay, can I use, if you look to what people use in alpine rock climbing, they'll use 5-6 millimeter Prusiks. Yeah, of course, in theory you can do that, but the tolerance becomes very low. There is a real risk, not just of damaging the Prusik cordage, but actually when load is applied, that low diameter Prusik cord will cut your climbing line. Testing we've done has shown that at very low loads, that will happen, may well happen. So this tech cord is something that that we're using for footlock lanyards and stuff like that. It's 5 mil, so that is definitely not a pass because it's too low in terms of our requirements of minimum 8 mil for Prusik cordage. Okay. So this is what I just mentioned, the 6 millimeter cordage in a full body weight instance. So you got, this would be like an inline anchor point or something. Somebody's tied on a 6 mil thimble with their climbing line running through it. There's 80 kilos hanging suspended off that line. There's 80 kilos acting on that Prusik. That will be a fail because that's full body load. Okay. This configuration, this would be like a lanyard. So lanyard passed around a branch, around an anchor point, back down to that thimble. That is a half body load configuration. So only half a body load acting on that Prusik. So that'll be a pass. Okay. Again, the rationale there being full body load, 6 mil Prusik acting, cordage acting on the climbing line may well cause damage and or failure of the line that you're tying into. Inline assemblies, again, this is something we talked about a lot, just very quickly. We're going to be looking for distance of less than 20 centimeters between the Prusik and the stopper knot. We want the stopper knot backed up, as in spiked, well, spiked on slip knots. The butterfly, we don't require a spike, alpha butterfly, but anything that can slip open, we need backed up. We want to have the knots correctly tied, dressed and set. We want to have the connectors positively orientated. What I mean by that is, especially in this kind of instance, where you're moving away from the inline anchor point in this case, where I can't assess the correct orientation of the connector, we want to have that carabiner, that pulley, that carabiner held in position, for instance, with a bit of rubber, or whatever, one of those keepers or something like that. That's what I mean by positive orientation. Then we are looking for good compatibility between pulley and connector. So for instance, if you had a big sloping roof carabiner, with a very wide profile and you really have to jam the pulley into there, that I would argue is not good compatibility. Whereas on an oval, that fits nicely onto the pulley, that would be good compatibility there. So that's another thing we're going to be looking at.
What about a pulley with a really big hole where the carabiner can tumble inside of it?
Well, there we get that. So if I had a pulley with a really big opening and the gate can slip through it, I would argue if one end of that carabiner is held in position, is captive, you've gone a long way towards ensuring correct orientation. But that's definitely something we're looking out for. We definitely do not want to have the barrel rotating into the pulley because that's going to cause significant damage very quickly. Yeah.
This may not be the right moment, but I'll ask since we're seeing that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pinto in that configuration versus say hitch climber or another rated pulley with moving G plates.
Yep.
What are your thoughts, and can you clarify that for everybody?
They're both being used in the way that they're intended to be used. I would say, I would request if a climber brings that in to say, what are you doing to hold that in position? So, if they can swing freely in both instances, I'd require, something to be added in to keep that in position. In my opinion, both of those, the pulleys that you mentioned, are viable. Well, I'm misunderstanding the question, Craig.
Let me say it in another way. In this application, it's a weapon type with a hitch climber pulley instead of a Pinto in that configuration.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that. From a tensor, from a strength point of view, they're both being used the way they should as a pulley.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
To be on hardware and textile, do you need the spacer for the Pinto in that configuration?
That's a really interesting question. There's a slight, if it's textile, definitely.
Yeah.
If it's metal, I'm not quite sure what the answer is. And I've spoken to the manufacturer about this. I'm not quite sure. Well, if you've got a sling through it, you definitely want to have a spacer in here. I would be happier having a spacer in there with carabiners as well. Taylor, can you talk to that?
At this point, as from DMM's perspective, as long as you use an oval carabiner or a BOA, something with a nice round open bottom, we do not require the spacer with a carabiner.
It's not wrong if you do it,
Right.
but it's not
Well,
required.
you just want to be loading both sides of the cheek plates equally. So you don't want like an offset D or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't want that in a sharp bend of a carabiner like a
Yeah.
Klettersteig or an offset D or something. It has to be an oval.
two types that are very specific.
Yeah.
Taylor has on my external brain. Thank you very much, Taylor. So that's good. If we got all of that, those cornerstones, those boxes ticked, that's good. So basically, this kind of illustrates that thought process behind allowing some of this gear. If I'm clear, if I've sort of defined corner points of requirements that I'm making of systems, then I can, people bring something to the table, I can just go through checking those boxes in my head. If they fulfill those points, it's good. And also, I'm being consistent. What's next? This is exciting. I did this at 6 o'clock this morning, I can't remember. So, connectors we're using shall have a triple action locking mechanisms and be auto-locking. They shall be positively orientated, that we're loading the correct axis.
A minimum triple action.
Minimum, yeah, triple action. Yeah. So the ascent systems, this is something I'm slightly wary of. I'll be interested to see what we're confronted with tomorrow. I thought some of the discussion we had before was already interesting because I think we need to try and move climbers away from a mindset which is, I'm trying to do this to conform to the rules. Really, we want to have climbers thinking, I'm doing this because I'm going for the best possible compatibility, the best possible configuration. So we're going to be looking at for configuration compatibility issues around these components. For instance, what kind of line are we looking at? Is the line that the climber is considering to use compatible with the pulleys? Dyneema lines with cam devices, for instance. And I can tell you, spoiler alert, I'm going to be very categorical about if you can't bring an ascender to me that says it's okay for a completely static Dyneema line, it's not going to go because I'm not aware of any ascender that will do that. They're all semi-static 1891 lines. Okay, so to me that's a classic compatibility issue. We can argue it either way. You may have been climbing on your Dyneema line with ascenders for years. I don't care. Because the ascender makes a very clear, the manufacturer makes that's what a day outdoors does for you. The manufacturer makes a very clear statement in regards to what they recommend, what type of line to run with this ascender, and we cannot say, well actually, that's all out the window, it'll be fine. That is not going to happen, or at least not if you're asking me. We're going to be considering the length of the tether. Manufacturers make us statements in regards to what length tether they want between an ascender and the tie-in point. The reason for this again being to define the full distance if somebody came unstuck conceivably. So if somebody's running like a 1.5 meter tether onto their ascender, that to me is not a very clever configuration unless they have arms like Mr. Tickle. But or T-Rex, that'd be the other extreme. But Petzl says it's a 1 meter tether. They say it can be static or dynamic. Other manufacturers say other things. So that's something we're going to be looking out for as well. I'm not saying we're going to get it all right, but these are things to look out for. Tether characteristics, as I was saying, is it a dynamo? Is it a static tether between the ascender and the harness? Is it dynamic? Is that correct for this use? Also, the connection, is somebody tied directly into their hand ascender? I will be unhappy with that, because that interface between the ascender and the rope is definitely not rope friendly. Are they using the right holes? On the old pencil ascenders, for instance, there's a foot loop hole and there's the connection hole. Has that been reversed? Things like that. As I say, it'll be interesting to see where we go with this tomorrow and what kind of things we're confronted with. Again, it's a learning curve. Thinking back to past gear checks, you'll have years where you have really good quality equipment brought in. You have other years where you're like, that was weird, there's some really rough stuff in there. So I do think there's a trend there where I think overall the quality of the equipment being brought to us has become better over the years. And I do think that that's an effect of people returning and talking amongst each other what requirements are made from our point of view, or what are we requesting that you bring to the table. The zigzag, what was I going to say here? The old story with the cracks, you're all familiar with that, the cracks that happened up by that rivet. The other thing I've found interesting, consistently there's a pattern, which is this kind of damage. The device is held in position by this rubber grommet in the hole to stop it from sliding around. But if people don't take that carabiner out regularly, you can get quite extensive grooving in the bottom of that carabiner. So what I would request you to do there is just swivel it out, have a quick look at that spot and see whether there's that kind of damage there. Totally typical. You will find traces or sometimes even quite extensive damage. Something like that for me is a fail, very unambiguously. There's an inspection notice on the treeMOTION went out. Obviously, some harnesses went out of the factory, stitching missing on the leg loops. So what you do, this stitching is underneath this tab. You just rotate the leg loop out of that tab to assess that the stitching is there. If you've got stitching there, it's good, and if there's nothing there, it's not. This is not safety critical. What will happen is the leg loop will just unravel, but that's obviously not what you're looking for. So that's one thing I'd like you to just keep an eye open for. There's other small things, like if you've got harnesses with shackles holding the rope bridge in place, just have a quick look at those shackles, whether you feel that there's been any movement there. Maybe you can see that they're lock-tighted. Well, I'll get a hold of some Allen keys for tomorrow in case we need to tighten any of those shackles. It's not atypical that you have things like that cropping up the gear. There's something about this environment we work in, a combination of sweat and sap and moisture, which just, if those shackles aren't glued shut, they will tend to creep open. Rope bridges on harnesses, we want to have the correct rope bridge in there. If the rope bridge has been changed, it's a fail, it's a resubmit. They need to go and source the correct rope bridge. Same for ropes and lanyards. The Petzl Xeon, for instance, we want to have the correct rope in there. If you're unsure, it's that black and white rope. If you're unsure, please check that with one of us. And it's obviously the green bridge on the treeMOTION.
Mark?
Yeah.
I noticed, and I got it in class as well, when you want to add a bridge, especially in the treeMOTION, can you do a double session
tie onto the front Ds?
You are also, I noticed a few rings, so you will have too many bridges. So
the question is, can I tie a second bridge onto these front D rings from here to here? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Well, the manufacturer's position on that is a modification. I have to say my understanding is it's an add-on. I would actually allow that. As long as those knots are tied correctly with enough rope sticking out the knot.
And it has to be the same rope.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's take that hurdle when we get there, okay?
Because I think if you wanted a shorter bridge,
People do tend to clip into both, don't
then it
they?
wouldn't matter.
If they clip into both, I don't really care. Because sometimes people just have that second bridge as backup. If they're running only on the add-in bridge, we need to talk about that. Okay? Did everybody get that? If you have a second bridge tied onto the front hardware, and the climber wants to use only that added-in bridge, let's have a look at it. If they're running the ring on both bridges, because they just want to have that the original bridge backed up, that's fine by me. Does that make sense? Yeah, Craig.
In rope bridges like this with stopper knots tied at either end,
Yep.
aside from the, I'll probably use the wrong name, but scaffold knot or
Yep.
double provisions like this, are there any other approved stopper knots, or
Nope.
is that the only one?
Only one, yeah. And then we had a safety notice on the slice came out the other day. What's obviously happened there in a couple is that the core coming in from this direction wasn't in the stitching, so you get this inconsistent diameter behind the stitching. Again, it's not super safety critical. They still get their 15 kN that is required of them, not for the 3 minutes. But so it's substandard. And it's just that it doesn't look good. So if you have something where you feel that this rope termination, there's inconsistent diameter behind it, just call us over and we'll have a look at it. Any splicing questions? Go to Tony Tressel, please. So obviously, if it's a 16 strand, bog standard, industry standard rope construction, you can feel the diameter is consistent. There's lock stitching in it. And you feel that you are able to assess that, fine. If there's anything that's unusual, splices that you're not familiar with, rope construction's not familiar with, please call over Tony. If you've got lock stitching missing, can we sort that out? If you've got splicing gear here? Okay, missing lock stitches again, Tony can sort that out for a modest fee. And I think that's what I wanted to say there. Any questions? Can't remember what. Single stationary line, work positioning, rig, ID rig, and rope wrench. Not much change there. We are going to be looking at the correct use of these devices. So braking hand only. Yeah. So they define basically pencil requires a braking hand below the device. Okay, so one hand releasing the handle, the other hand tending the rope as it runs into the device. So you can't hold both ropes, the handle and the rope in one hand. Yeah.
In terms of the part on the rig that opens,
That
do we have to
the latch.
something in there for a while?
Yeah, we have required that.
It-
We've not been consistent on that.
So the last I heard was if it was on your person, you didn't need it, and if it was on your base anchor system, you did.
No, other way around. If it were on a base anchor, I wouldn't be so worried about it.
Oh, okay.
If it's on your person, and I talked to Petzl about that, they said they've had 1 or 2 instances, and I think it was people who were working on construction sites, with the steel rebars that they put inside the concrete, and they had an instance where that managed to push open this gate, but
Okay.
I can't get too worked up about it either way.
So we don't even put zip tie in or anything like that?
We've not been doing it the past couple of years, to be honest. I think we took our eye off the ball there a little bit. But it wasn't working very well. I think if you don't rivet this hole, it's still going to swing open.
I agree with you completely, I just wondered what you're...
Yeah. No, I think we moved. Initially, you're right. We said if you're using that, we need to have that block, but we've not been consistent on that. So I'd suggest that we just carry on being inconsistent. Oh yeah, we're being consistently inconsistent. General considerations, just closing. Actually, I'm not over time. If you have unfamiliar equipment, and let's face it, do you know what I've forgotten? There's 2 other things that we've allowed. We've got the going back and forwards over this device. This is the TASLove 2. This device here, I've got it here if you want to have a look at it afterwards. It's an interesting device. It's a backup device as well as a descender. You can use it in ascent as well. Certainly something that we'll see more of in the ascent event. I'm quite impressed with the quality of the documentation. They've done a pretty thorough job on that. We managed to clear up some ambiguity in regards to notification yesterday, so we're going to allow that. The Matt Cornell rope harness, tree staff have provided us with third-party verification of or testing. We have that documentation, so we will allow the Matt Cornell rope harness. Yeah, Alex.
We had a question on Facebook about Unisender.
We still do not have, look, I love to allow gear, okay? I think we all love to see people using the equipment they're comfortable and familiar with. But we do, every time, when we talk, Alex, about equipment being brought into, or if you ask me a technical question, I'll always put on my hat where I'm going, okay, if everything went bad and, you know, let's hope it never happens, but if we had an accident with this piece of equipment, can I justify having allowed it? There's a number of ways I can justify allowing a piece of equipment based on documentation that I've been provided with by the manufacturer, based on the certification that the equipment has been through, based on, you know, handling a piece of equipment myself. And a combination of those 3 points, all 3 points, if it all feels, it all rings true, I've got good documentation, the relevant standards, the relevant applicable standards have been, are fulfilled, and it handles well, yes, I do believe I can back up a call. If I don't have that, if it's all very tentative, and I'm just saying, yeah, that'll be all right, just because it's a mate who's asking me whether I can allow this piece of equipment, that's not much of a ground to allow a piece of equipment. So, at your chapter level, if you're making those kind of decisions, I would urge you to cover your bases and just make sure that you have as good a reason as possible for allowing a piece of equipment in. I'm not saying that certification is not the only way to assess whether something is fit for purpose, because that's the obvious, that's the pink elephant in the room. The equipment shall be fit for purpose as well. I might have a piece of equipment that's, you know, fully certified and superficially good to go, but it's not fit for the purpose that I'm intending to use it for. And from a legislation point of view, that's your job as the competent person using this piece of equipment to assess whether it's fit for the job you intend to use it for. So you can't just only say, you know, it's got all the relevant EN standards, this is good to go, and totally leave out of account what I'm actually going to use it for. Because the only thing that the manufacturer is saying in regards to those standards is, this piece of equipment fulfills those standards, but it doesn't know that I, Mark, intend to use it for this. That final decision always rests with me. Sorry, that was a bit of a roundabout answer. Did that answer your question? What was that? No, it did answer the question. I'm there. No, we're spiraling in here. So the Unisender, we don't have the information.
My understanding is they're in the process of trying to get the certification.
Well, that makes me very warm and fuzzy and happy, but you know.
Yes,
it's good. This stuff is not rocket science, you know, but I think I think it's unfair to allow to be lenient on somebody and on other people, requiring them to be super thorough. So at this point in time, Rock Exotica have not provided us with documentation for the Unisender, and in future I hope they will. That'd be great. It'd be great for other devices. Somebody was asking about the rope on it today. It'd be great if we could have third-party verified testing on that as well, because then we could allow that device in as well. At the end of the day, this competition is an industry skills competition. We're trying to reflect the abilities and skills and tools used in this industry. So yeah, but we need to have the manufacturers to provide us with the relevant information. Yeah.
Has there been any confirmation on the twin line from ART as far as that whole assembly?
On what, I'm sorry?
The twin line system from ART, is that, have we decided on that as far as the way it's configured for the manufacturing stuff? It's not backed up, there's no anchor, it has no backup at all. Is that?
That's a good question.
Or if it is, are we not having backup?
Yeah, do you know what, I'll have to get back to you on that one. Yeah, that slamming noise you heard, that was us exiting my zone of competence. It was the door slamming shut. No, I'll get back to you on that one. I'm assuming we're good with that, because at the end of the day, yeah, it's remote. Let me have a think about that one. Do you, Fafa, was that, you allowed that in the Germans?
No, that? No, okay.
It was allowed in the Germans.
Yeah.
Question, yeah.
Yeah, that's Finland, yes, allowed, yeah.
It seems pretty open for some fall and hit that catch and off you go.
Let's see what happens to gear check. Let's see if we can bring that.
Hubert hat es getestet auf dem Torpedo und auf dem HTP und dafür ist es auch zertifiziert.
Das Problem ist aber, dass da irgendwie, weißt du, da sagen wir jetzt, dass wir Backups verlangen.
Ja.
Und da ist es nicht der Fall.
Nee. Also das ist sozusagen, das ist ja auch nicht so an dem Rope Guide, sondern das Seil geht durch die Rolle, wird dann blockiert am Trapez und dieses Seil ist dann zertifiziert. Nicht das Seil, was um den Stamm ist, sondern das Seil, was durch die Rolle ist.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll have a quick talk about that. And if you're planning to use the ART twin line, bring it in tomorrow to gear check, and we'll give you a heads up on it. Okay? Sorry, I could have anticipated that one. So general considerations are unfamiliar equipment. Let's talk about it. Let's try and work towards an answer. Homemade or DIY gear? Look, I can't make a statement. If I'm doing a PP inspection in a company and I have home splice stuff put in front of me, I'm going to put it to one side. Because at the end of the day, what I'm doing is I'm giving an expert opinion. And I would caution you here. Last weekend you were at the barbecue at a mate's place, and he shows you, because he knows you're going to ITCC next week, he shows you a piece of geese spliced together himself. And he goes, do you think that's okay? You go, yeah, I'll do okay. That is an expert opinion you're giving there. Expert opinion carries weight. Legally speaking, carries weight. Okay? So I will not make a statement about a piece of gear that I do not know how it was put together. The competencies of this person who put that piece of equipment together. From an employer's point of view, I struggle to justify an employee using equipment that is homemade, DIY, when there is equivalent certified products on the market. Now, if there's something where there's not an equivalent, we have to talk about it, okay? That's a different story. And I think in an instance like that, I would have a couple of pieces of that equipment pull tested maybe, to try and put a bit of flesh on the bone in regards to allowing this or not. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who I value a lot, who's highly competent, was splicing sabers, and one of our employees came back from a competition or something with one of these sabers, right? And I was like, well, okay, explain to me why you think this pulley saber is better than the certified pulley sabers. And he explained that it was because you could install it mid-line. But to me, that was insufficient justification to allow certified, non-certified versus certified. So I asked him not to use it. And guess what? A couple of years later, when the person who was making these had them pull tested, he realized the braking strength was much too low. So I'm not saying this to criticize this person. I think he did the right thing in the wrong sequence. Okay? So, yeah, if you think home splicing is great, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying try and become clearer, get some testing done on it. Yeah.
Question, how are we expecting pilots to prove that they have hand spliced themselves? Do we need documentation or?
It's labeled, it'll be labeled. And if you're unclear about splicing, send it off to Tony. We can assess that. This is terminations on ropes. I'm talking more about rope tools actually. And one thing that always gets me going is when people are home splicing, like those Aramid lanyards. All right, aramid is great stuff. Super strong, super heat resistant, really dislikes UV. So if I see somebody rocking up with a lanyard made out of aramid, which has been exposed to sunlight for goodness knows how long, sometimes, you know, the aramid will go, it looks blunt, it feels blunt, it goes grey, looks tired. I'm like, it's just not the right material for what you're using it for. Aramid and a friction hitch is another story, because friction hitches you fire and forget, you use them for a couple of months. Aramids in, like, you know, ocean polyester for instance, in savers, in ring savers, or in lanyards, I'm really not convinced by. I'd look at that closely, and if it's looking tired, I think I'll pull it. Oh, good. My default position, if I don't know it, I'm going to fail it. Sorry, it's not being nasty, it's not being vindictive, it's not that I've scored against the competitor, it's just I can't answer this question. If I can't answer it, they don't provide me with answers, we can't work out an answer together, it's going to be a fail. That is a totally reasonable default position to have. I would urge you in your professional life or at chapter level to assume the same position. Nobody is admitting to weakness if they fail a piece of gear. The only thing you're admitting to is that you don't have a foundation, a basis to make a call on. So ultimately, I'm almost done, I'm sorry, it's dragging on a bit. Decisions shall be consistent. They shall be in compliance with ITCC rules. They shall be in compliance with relevant regulations where applicable. And they shall be in compliance with manufacturer specifications. That to me is a consistent set of criteria that I try to apply when making decisions about equipment. Standards evolve, and actually after the Ascent event today, I'm tempted to say that events evolve as well. Instead, you know, this is all about gaining better understandings, and like the discussion we are having about this Ascent event, standards do the same thing. They're not static, they will change over time and evolve as the new insight is won, new research is done, or new fields of application are applied to a piece of equipment or to a group of equipment. There you go, I skipped questions. So there you go. Thank you for being here, thank you for being patient.